Hello beautiful friends, it's Belinda. I'm here today to share my latest project for the Cut to You design team. Today I'm going to be using this pie graph cut file, which is actually an exclusive freebie, or one of the exclusive freebies that will be available to newsletter subscribers this month. So if you aren't already subscribed to the Cut to You newsletter, I will include a link in the description box down below for you, so you can go ahead and do that. I believe there are 2 free cut files coming this month, and this pie graph cut file is one of them, and that's what I'm using today. So off camera I have gone ahead and I've cut this out of some textured white cardstock. If I get it up close, hopefully you can see I have done some hand stitching around the edge there, and I used my silhouette to help me punch those holes so that they're nice and evenly spaced. And then I have backed this piece with just some plain vellum. I've also duplicated the cut file onto the background, which is again another piece of textured white cardstock, and once again you'll see that I've got some hand stitching around each of those pieces, which I used my silhouette to help me do. But the difference between the way that I've done it on this piece as opposed to this piece is in my Silhouette Studio software I actually released the outside path, so that gives me these negative spaces rather than cutting that whole piece out. I'm going to be using the absolutely gorgeous, uniquely creative Wise and Free collection, which came out in, I think, January 2020. And I have this really recent photo of myself that I'm going to be using for this layout. So let's hop on fast forward and see this one come together. Okay, so I just wanted to add that if you are watching this video later and you do want to get your hands on this pie graph cut file from Cut to You, I will include the link in the description box down below for where you can purchase it in the Cut to You shop online, because it is available for purchase as well if you missed out on the freebie with the newsletter. So what I'm doing here is I'm just trimming down my cardstock a little bit, because of course I am going to add a full 12 by 12 mat behind my page. But before I do that, I'm going to add just a little bit of mixed media. I didn't quite have the right color pink to match the papers in the collection, so I'm just making up my own little blend here by mixing a couple of different acrylic paints together, and I'm adding some white just to tone it down a little bit, and then I add a fair bit of water to the mix to make it nice and watery so that I can do some splatters across my background. And I will also add some gold splatters using my Liquitex acrylic ink as well, which is just a fantastic mixed media medium if you are into your splattering. And then while I'm doing this, I just wanted to take a moment to remind you, or for any new viewers, just to let you know one of the fantastic things about the Cut to You shop is that Gwen not only offers the digital cut files for download, but if you are not if you don't have your own electronic die cutting machine, she also offers custom cuts. So if you like any of the cut files that you've seen either in the shop or from a design team member or online, you can order a custom cut on some beautiful white cardstock, and she will ship that out to you anywhere in the world. So I think that's really fantastic, because I understand that not everybody owns a digital die cutting machine or owns an electronic die cutting machine, and not everybody wants to. But if you are inclined to try those out, that's a really fantastic offering that you can find in the Cut to You store, which you'll find linked in my description box below. So with that little bit of chatter, I have almost finished my splattering. You would have seen me there wipe up a little bit of that pink. There was a really yucky looking blotch that I wasn't happy with, and I got a little bit too gung-ho while I was wiping it off, and I ended up taking off some of the paper. But it's okay, or the top layer of paper I should say, but it is okay because I do go in later and that gets covered up with some of my embellishing later on. So this photo is in a square, I believe it's a 4x4 size, and I'm adding just a plain white photo mat using some scrap cardstock that I had sitting by. And now I'm going to have a flip through this paper pack. I cannot just speak highly enough of these products from Uniquely Creative. The paper is just so luscious. It is thick, it is smooth, it is just absolutely delightful to work with. Yeah, and I love that it's an Australian company, it's an Australian product, so I love being able to support them. And their kit subscription is such good value, I think. So I'm really, really happy that these products exist, and I'm really, really happy that I am now subscribed and getting them every month. So I've gone through and I've just chosen, I'm going to use that beautiful pink script paper as the mat for my page, and then I'm also replicating that as a mat for my photo. I do like to do that, bringing in whatever the matting page is for the full 12 by 12. I like to then repeat that when I'm matting my photo. I feel like that makes my layout just feel a little bit more cohesive. And then the only other layer that I'm going to add behind this photo is this specialty vellum. It's a Heidi Swap vellum. I was at my local Spotlight store recently and I happened to notice in their paper section that they had almost all of their specialty vellums and acetates all on clearance. So these papers that were normally, I think, $3 to $4 each were marked down to clear at $1 each. So I grabbed a whole stack of them. I think I grabbed about 20 of them because they're just really nice for some soft layers behind photos and on layouts. So I'm adding that gold foil stripe behind the photo. You will have seen I used my distressing tool to distress the edges of my photo before I put that down. And I have of course told a lie, it's not the only other mat. I'm also going to add this tissue paper behind it just for lots of extra softness. And what I'm doing here is I'm just scrunching up that tissue paper just to give it a really nice textured look. I do like the tissue paper on its own, but I'm finding that by scrunching it up a little bit before putting it down, it just gives it a really nice soft finish, and it adds a little bit more detail to the layering. So I'm double layering that, but as you can see here, my second layer didn't quite reach to the bottom of the first layer. So once I have grabbed, sorry, having a little bit of word salad happening here. I grab another little piece and just cut that off, and I'm just going to fill in that little bit down the bottom. You don't notice it once it's all trimmed down. You don't notice that it's pieced together because it is that bottom layer, and it's really not noticeable at all. And then using my scissors to just trim around the edges nice and close to the photo, and it just adds a really nice softness behind that photo, because with this layout I was absolutely going for nice and soft and pretty, and that'll make sense when you see my journaling and my title. So I've also gone through the paper collection and I've just chosen a bunch or a few different papers, and I'm playing around here to figure out what I want to use to back these pieces of the pie. I was initially thinking about using that wood grain pattern, but in the end I have just stuck with some different pinks and I end up repeating some of them. So I'm using this pink check piece and I've used that twice, and then I've got those other pinks that I'm going to be layering underneath. And I'm not going to make you watch this whole thing, I'm just adding some glue, light bit of glue around each one, and then I'm going to stick it down, flip it over, trim off the excess and keep going. So that's it now, all done. You can see that all of those spaces are filled, and now I'm taking this vellum backed piece and I'm going to layer it on top, but slightly turned or rotated slightly. I'm only adding my wet adhesive just to the outside pieces. I'm not adding it to the end because it's not going to need it. That vellum, because it has got some adhesive on it, it's warped just slightly, so adding the adhesive on either side just helps it to stick down. And then I'm popping my really big heavy uni textbook on top just to help that lay flat while it's drying. So I love how those two layered pieces, or the slightly rotated layered pieces, just really add lots of detail and interest to that background. And in the end, so much of that gets covered up with my photo and my embellishing, but there's enough around the edges that I think just really give it a nice background look and help to the overall effect of the finished layout. So I have typed out some journaling on my printer. I had a couple of different quotes that I had typed out and I wasn't sure which one I was going to use. I had thought about using both of them, but it was just too much journaling for the design of this page, so I only go with one of them. I had this chipboard piece which was just happened to be in a pack that was on my desk that said exhale, and it was speaking to me. I've been a little bit stressed out lately, and things with at home, being a mostly stay-at-home mum, have been a little bit trying lately. And I took this photo of myself while I was sitting outside the front of my house having a little picnic on the lawn with my kids, and I just was really thinking about how I need to try and slow down and just stop and breathe a little bit. And so that's what this layout is about. The quote that I ended up choosing was just exactly about that. It was about slowing down and breathing and just taking in the moment. I've gone through the ephemera pack, and I've also fussy cut some florals from the papers, and now I'm just going to layer them up around my photo. So I'm using a combination of adhesives here, and that's what you're going to see throughout the rest of this video now, is mostly my embellishing. So I'm using my wet adhesive just to stick down the inside pieces, the pieces that are closest to the photo. And then I am using a variety of foam tape behind the outside pieces of those florals to add some depth and dimension. So you may have noticed there that I had a piece of tape and I actually cut, I think, 2 or 3 pieces about roughly the same size, and I layered them up so that it added lots of depth behind that floral that's up on the top right cluster there. I'm finding it hard to get the backing off this foam tape, but that is my process. That is how I'm approaching this layering here. I've got all of my foam adhesives out. Some are really thick, some are really thin, and I am just going to town with adding lots of depth, which is really interesting because my process normally has been to keep my layouts nice and flat, but I just felt inspired to create something that had lots of different layers, and I felt like the only way to really achieve that was to add lots of dimension. And as I am layering up these pieces around my photo, I'm also making sure that I am varying where I'm actually placing them in relation to the layers behind the photo. So some of the pieces are sitting flat against the background all the way underneath those photo layers. Others are tucked in between the layers. By doing that, it just adds a lot more interest and a lot more depth to the layers, and it helps it feel like it's got more of a 3D look, if that makes sense. I'm also being mindful of making sure that I have balance between those 2 clusters of embellishments that I'm creating here. So with the pie graph background, the largest pieces are heading towards the bottom left of the page. So that's adding a lot of visual weight to that bottom left-hand side, which is why my top right cluster is a little bit bigger and a little bit heavier than what is going on the bottom left, just to balance out that background piece there. I have playing around with a few of the different die cuts to see what I want to go in there. I've got these really beautiful little feathers which I fussy cut out from one of the papers, and I'm just tucking those in behind that layer there, and you can see I've used a variety of different foam dots to add the dimension behind them there. And I think to finish off now, I'm going to come in and I'm going to add that chipboard word. It's off camera at the moment because I realized that the color of it just didn't quite go with the rest of my layout. So I used the leftover watered down acrylic paint and just painted over the top of that chipboard, and it's given it a really nice multicolored look because the acrylic was watered down, so it wasn't super opaque. So it's given it a really nice, two-toned color. I also grabbed a couple of wood veneer pieces from my stash, again, just to bring in a different element to add some interest to those clusters. And I made this little tassel using some of the same thread that I had used to hand stitch around the pie chart piece. So I'm playing around with where I want that title to go. Ultimately, it is going to sit there, and then my journaling will nestle in underneath it, and I do use some foam tape to adhere that journaling down. So that is it for this layer. Of course, I have some close-up photos coming at the end, and I would like to say thank you so much again for watching. If you are not already a subscriber to my channel, I would really appreciate it if you would go ahead and subscribe and give me a like if you enjoyed this video. It helps me to grow my channel. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day.